From one party's leadership challenge to another, the Republican Party is also facing one. Former President Trump still wields huge influence on Republicans in Congress, but Republican governors collectively have been able to maintain some independence from him. You're starting to see that spread. Joining me now is the Republican governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan. Governor Hogan, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning.
You've been sort of alone on this for years, saying the governors are pushing back, and you're starting to see more evidence of that. But I want to start overseas. Is there anything to be learned by the party from what the conservatives, the Tories, did with their unpopular and controversial leader?
Well, I think maybe not getting away from what the basic tenets of your party are, and changing direction. And I think he did some crazy things that didn't make the public very happy, and he lost his position.
Why isn't the America's conservative party doing the same thing with their leader?
Well, I would argue that we are. It's just taking longer than it should. As you pointed out, I've been talking about this for years now, and I felt like I was on a lifeboat, all by myself. But now we need a bigger boat because more and more people are speaking out every day. I was chair of the National Governors Association. We were pushing back all throughout COVID, but I've said that President Trump's influence on the party was going to diminish over time. It hasn't happened, rapidly, but it has diminished dramatically. And there are only about 34% of Republican primary voters who want to see the president run again.
You're in this awkward spot, and I know you work with a lot of these governor's races around the country. Governor Kemp was able to push back a Trump influence.
Yeah.
But you look at what's happening in Arizona, and there's a fight there. You look what's happening in Maryland.
Yep.
You have a fight there. You look at what's happening in Michigan, and there's no anti-Trump candidate because of some really bad campaign tactics,
right,
if you will. You win some, you lose some. Arizona and Michigan are pretty tough ones to lose, no?
Well, I agree, but it's an example of the fact that Trump's influence is diminishing. So I'm on the RGA Executive Committee. Mm-hmm. There were 5 different governors where Trump was attacking them. All of them won. I mean, I went down and did events for Brian Kemp. A couple of my staffers are down working in his campaign. Brian Kemp won by 52 points, and right, Brad Little won, and Kay Ivey won, and a number of other, all the incumbent governors that Trump went after have won their primaries. But yeah, national Democrats are now kind of colluding with Trump.
Well, it's funny you said I'm going to play an ad now and ask you about it. Here it is.
Yeah.
This is one running in Maryland.
Dan Cox, Donald Trump's hand-picked candidate for Maryland governor. Cox worked with Trump, trying to prove the last election was a fraud. Dan Cox, too close to Trump, too conservative for Maryland.
Obviously, we know they're trying to say, hey, look at who's the more conservative guy. Now, they're not pretending they like the candidate here. Sometimes you see that in these subtle ads. But is this a Donald Trump problem or a Democratic Party aggressiveness?
Well, it's both. But I think this is a perfect example of, the Democratic Party is talking about, defending democracy, but they're spending tens of millions of dollars to promote, conspiracy theory, believing, this guy that they're promoting with that ad took 2 busloads of people to the Capitol on January 6th and called Mike Pence a traitor while they were saying, hang Mike Pence.
But when Trump endorses him, is it do you blame the Democratic Party for pointing that out?
Well, Trump shouldn't be endorsing him, but the Democratic Party shouldn't be spending millions of dollars trying to promote conspiracy theorists.
No, I hear you, but if Trump wasn't doing it,
I agree.
You would have a better case.
Look,
right?
Nobody's been standing up more to Donald Trump than me, and I'm going all around the country helping people that Trump is attacking, and we're winning most of them.
Based on what you've gleaned from the January 6th committee and what you've taken away, do you think he should be charged with a crime?
Well, I think that's for the Justice Department to decide, because I think one thing the American people do want is to take the politics out of it and get to the facts of what happened. I think the committee's done a service in bringing a lot of people forward that are finally talking, and we have a lot more information than we did. But that's something the Justice Department has to decide. Look, a lot of people are now talking.
The country? Do you think the country can handle prosecuting a former president?
Yeah, I'm not sure they can, but I think, no man is above the law. So if that's where the facts lead, that's what has to happen. But, a lot of people are talking about January 6th, but I was actually taking action on January 6th. I sent the Maryland State Police, riot police, and I sent the Maryland National Guard, and they were all the first to arrive to defend the leaders of Congress and the vice president.
I want to change subject slightly on the issue of guns. Your state, the Supreme Court ruling on the New York law meant Maryland's permit law, you were going to have to essentially allow it to happen. Do you feel as if the Supreme Court has constrained your ability to fight guns?
Well, look, I think it really doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, in Maryland, we've got some of the toughest gun laws in the country, but it hasn't stopped the shooting. So 99% of the gun crimes that take place are all illegal guns. It has nothing to do with
but
people
they're coming
that are
from states that
for,
don't have the Maryland laws, correct?
Well, they're ghost guns, and they're people that are stealing and trafficking in stolen guns. But the violent crime problem is real. And it doesn't have much to do with how you go about registration on concealed carry, because the shooters, the repeat violent offenders, they don't follow gun laws.
Yeah.
So.
No, I hear you. But look at all these mass shootings.
Yep.
Too many of them. They're always, oh, by the way, the gun was purchased legally.
Yeah.
So and here you have states with red flag laws that can't be implemented. Is that really the elixir?
Well, look, I signed a red flag law that does work in Maryland, so we aren't having some of those issues. I'm for universal background checks and for reasonable restrictions, but I've always supported the right of law-abiding citizens to go through a process and to be able to bear arms, but to do everything we possibly can to take guns away from the mentally ill and criminals. And that's the problem in our state. Our legislature keeps voting against penalties for people that shoot people with guns.
What do you think the Supreme Court has been too conservative, about right, or maybe too activist?
I'm not sure whether they've been activists or not, and I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I think the Supreme Court and the people that are on there made decisions based on what they thought their interpretation of the law was. And I know a lot of people conflate, how this came about, but I think some of these issues that hadn't been heard before, they just found a legal reason for taking the action.
Are you worried it's become politicized, the court?
I'm worried about the fact that the country is so dramatically divided, and that some of these issues are going to continue to help us be divided. But I think the vast majority of people in America are just frustrated with all the angry rhetoric on both sides.
I know you're thinking about running for president. What would make you not run?
Well, look, I'm going to do the best job I can being governor until next January, but and I don't know exactly what the future holds. But I do think that there are an awful lot of people, I would call them the exhausted majority of Americans, who are frustrated with the far left and the far right. And they want to see us go in a different direction. So I've seen nothing that would dissuade me from thinking that I think there's a growing demand for exactly what we've done in Maryland over the last 8 years.
You think Donald Trump, if he runs, would ever concede losing a primary?
I'm hopeful that Donald Trump won't be running and won't be the nominee if he does run.
Governor Larry Hogan, Republican from Maryland. It's good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.